Welcome to Messages of Hope. You know, I have brought you this show night after night to inspire you and support you with creating more hope in your life. I'm the author of 3 best-selling books. My name's Jill Lublin. I've written Guerrilla Publicity, Networking Magic, and my newest book, Get Noticed, Get Referrals. Tonight on Messages of Hope, we have an amazing show for you, and I bring you Hal Elrod. Hal has written a book about his major accident that he had when he was 20 and about his whole life and how it changed. So Hal, let's talk to you.
Thank you, Jill. It's an honor to be here.
You know, I'm just fascinated. As I understand, you were a hotshot 19-year-old. You don't look much older than that right now. But here you were a hotshot 19-year-old, and as I understand it, a salesman and doing great in your company. And you tell us what happened.
Well, I actually gave up my dream job to sell those knives. What happened, my dream when I was 15 was to be a nationally syndicated radio disc jockey. And I got a call from the local radio station in my hometown, and they actually had a spot. They wanted a high school student to come DJ, so it was amazing. 2 days before the show, though, I was driving around town with my mom, and I was stressed out. She could tell I was fidgeting and I was nervous. And she said, "Hal, what's wrong?" I said, "Mom, I've got the radio show in 2 days and I don't have a name picked out. Like a cool DJ name. DJs have cool names, right?" She said, "Why don't you be like Hal my pal or your pal Hal, or make it cool like Yo Pal Hal?" I said, "Mom, you're such a nerd. I'm never going to be Yo Pal Hal." And if you look at my book, it graces the cover, my website, yopalhal.com. It ended up sticking. And I think the lesson is Mom is always right, right? And in terms of my career in sales, I gave up my dream job DJing at 19 and took a job selling kitchen cutlery of all things and in-home presentations, selling knives. And not something I never expected, but something happened in those first couple days of training where I decided I wanted to really try to achieve at a level that I never had before. And I went out in my first 10 days and I set the all-time company record. And a dream was born when they put me on stage and I got to start speaking. And I got to start sharing and inspiring, and I thought, I want to be a motivational speaker. And so that my dream was born at 19, and I kept selling Cutco and speaking at events and kind of pursued that dream. So that's kind of where I got my start in adult life, if you will.
But I just have to ask you, why did you decide to sell cutlery door to door? We'll get into the other stuff, but I just have to know that.
Well, it was actually one of my good friends that I met in college. I met him and we went to school for 9 months together, and he said, "You should," he sold these Cutco kitchen knives, and he said, "You should sell these knives. They're fantastic and you'd be great, Hal. You've got a great personality." I said, "I'm not a salesman. I've never sold anything in my life, and the last thing I want to do is not only sell something, but to sell knives door to door." And I happened to be with him one day when he went by the Cutco office, and it just so happened I met the manager, and the manager was a great salesperson. He sold me that it was a good idea to try this out. And so that was really it. It was just one chance meeting with this manager who's a good friend of mine now. And I said, "Okay, I'll sign me up for training. I'll give it a shot." And so I just tried it. And then in those first 10 days when I set that record, it was like I was never the same. I thought, wow, this is really an opportunity that I can run with.
So here you were, a successful salesman, young, ambitious, excited. And what happened?
About a year and a half after I started selling Cutco, I gave a speech at the Modesto Cutco office near my home, about an hour and a half away from home. And after the speech, I actually got my first standing ovation. And again, it was solidifying, wow, this is what I want to do someday. I want to be like Tony Robbins or something and be a motivational speaker. And I got in my car, and it was my first new car. It was a new Ford Mustang. I got on the freeway, about an hour and a half drive home. And it was about 11:32 p.m. after the meeting. And I remember, the last thing I remember is feeling really grateful and wanting to call my mom and dad to let them know how great my speech went. And what ended up happening was, looking at the clock, I thought at 11:32 p.m., I better wait till morning, it's kind of late. And the last thing I remember is remembering that night that I should call mom and dad, but I better wait till morning. And at approximately 11:33, 11:34 p.m., a man who I had never met had a few beers at a bar. He got on the freeway to go one exit home, thinking, I'm sure, no big deal, it's just one exit. And at about 11:34 p.m., I was hit head-on by this drunk driver. He was at approximately 70 miles an hour driving a Chevy truck. I was in my Mustang, and at 70 miles an hour, we hit head-on. And after I hit the drunk driver head-on, the worst of it would follow. And my car actually spun off the drunk driver, and it spun in front of the car behind me, and that car hit me in the door at 70 miles an hour. And instantaneously, I broke 13 bones on the left side of my body. I broke my leg, I broke my arm, I broke my pelvis in 3 places. My ear was almost completely severed. I broke all the bones in my eye. And instantly, unable to withstand the pain, I fell into a coma. And a minute later, my best friend, who had gotten on the freeway just right behind me. In fact, we had raced kind of going to get on the freeway, and he got stuck at a stoplight. And I remember thinking, too bad for him. And a minute later, he found me on the freeway, and when he checked my pulse, I had a slight pulse. He called 911. He actually called my mom and dad and woke them up out of bed to tell them what had happened to me. And the ambulance, they got there, and it took them an hour to cut me out of the car, and when they did, my heart stopped beating. I'd lost so much blood that my heart stopped beating, and I was clinically dead for 5 or 6 minutes, as the reports show. And they rushed me onto the helicopter, put me in the medevaced me to the hospital.
The hospital.
The hospital,
yes.
yeah. That brain damage, yeah. And I did suffer brain damage, the short-term memory. So yeah, if I go blank, Jill, pay good attention. You might have to save me here. But yeah, they rushed me to the hospital, and my parents arrived, and they received the news that I had suffered 13 broken bones, permanent brain damage, and that I may never walk again, and that this coma could last up to a year. So that was the state that night. That was my my condition and my diagnosis after the accident.
So there are a few interesting things here. Your best friend found you.
Sure.
Called the police and emergency in probably faster than might have occurred otherwise. Sure. Did the other drivers live? Were there any fatalities involved?
That's a great question. No, surprisingly, with all these different, the 3 cars that were in the accident, I was the only person that sustained major injuries.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. And there were actually 3 people in the car that hit me in the door, and then the drunk driver that hit me head on. And everybody else cuts and bruises, but nobody else had anything serious.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
So obviously your life changed, and the truth is you were dead, or so we thought, right?
Yeah.
So then what happened? So I understand that you came out of the coma pretty quick, not like they expected at all.
Not like they expected. They thought I'd been in a coma for 6 months to a year, and really miraculously 6 days later, I woke up from my coma. And for my parents, it was a relief. It was a celebration. For me, it was facing a new reality. And I woke up to the potentially devastating reality that I had 13 broken bones, that everything hurt, that I did have brain damage, and my short-term memory was almost wiped out for the time being. And who knows how long it would take to get better and how much better it would get. But in the hospital, I didn't remember from 5 minutes, 5 minutes to 5 minutes, I would forget what had just happened. I would literally fall asleep and wake back up and be terrified, not knowing where I was. And I had to face the reality that the doctors diagnosed I may never walk again. And that was a tough reality to face, and it was a very trying time, trying to accept what had happened to me and take all that in.
Well, I'm sure actually that, in a way, was one of the hardest things. I've worked with a paraplegic who had a surfing accident at the age of 18, something similar, and I remember that he spoke about basically all I wanted to do was to die. Right? And actually you did die. And
Sure.
when you woke up, I'm curious, what were some of your first thoughts? Do you remember anything you thought when you first woke up?
I don't remember because of the brain damage. I don't remember until about 3 weeks after the accident, 2 or 3 weeks after the accident. But I know what my initial thoughts were from mom and dad and people that were there that have shared with me my experience. And they said I was really scared, and I would fall back to sleep again, and the brain damage, I'd forget what had happened. I'd wake up again and want to know where I was and what happened.
Did they tell you?
And they let me know. The doctor said, be honest with him, tell him he's been in this accident, that everything's going to be okay, give him a message of hope, if you will. And I know that my parents did tell me that I was very, for what had happened, as soon as they would calm me down and tell me what had happened, I went right into humor. Surprisingly. part of the brain damage that I suffered, it affected two areas. One being short-term memory, the other being your inhibitions. And ironically, I was hit head-on by a drunk driver, and the brain damage I suffered was the same of somebody who's drunk. It's the same type of symptoms, short-term memory, uninhibited behavior, kind of losing the filter. So I said everything that I thought, that a 20-year-old thought. And I told a lot of jokes, and I was always trying to make people laugh, according to my parents. That was kind of my initial reaction. It was a combination of fear and humor, kind of back and forth.
Well, you mentioned, as we were talking at the beginning of the show, something about as the nurses were giving you sponge baths, you were saying inappropriate things, perhaps?
Literally anything that a 20-year-old guy thinks, I would say. And if you could imagine, I had these attractive nurses giving me a sponge bath, and I was, hitting on them, telling them, and being a salesperson too, keep in mind, saying things like, hey, you're getting to bathe me. It's only fair if I get to bathe you. And they actually had to put it got so inappropriate that my parents had to post a sign on the outside of my hospital door for all the hospital visitors saying, warning, we apologize for Hal in advance. He has brain damage. He can't be held responsible for what he says. If he offends you, we're sorry. Something along those lines. And it's funny, friends and visitors would come, people that had known me since I was, just little, a young person, and they would read the sign and dismiss it and go, oh, I'm sure he'll be fine. Same people within 10 minutes are, leaving, giving us their best wishes, but can't keep their young children around. And I actually went through 4 hospital roommates because I was in a children's hospital, and the parents were so offended they actually had to remove. So my friends thought it was funny. My parents were, faces red every few minutes. So.
Oh, I'm sure. And you, of course, probably hardly noticed, right?
I thought it was great. And my defense was that I'm just being honest. I would always say what I thought. So I was always being honest, and that was my defense. I would just say, I'm being honest. I think the nurse is cute, or so it was pretty entertaining.
For you, probably more so.
For me and my friends. I would have my friends come visit. It'd be like Friday night, what should we do? Let's go visit Hal in the hospital. He's hilarious. So, it was a good time.
Well, I hope that a good time was had by some, but certainly, how long were you in the hospital then?
My stay, they thought I'd be in the hospital for at least a year. And before I share that part, I did want to share with you something you asked me earlier before we started the interview tonight about how I responded to the accident. And the doctors actually thought that I was in denial. Now, I didn't know this, but they called my mom and dad in one night, and they said, we're really concerned with Hal. Every time we spend time with Hal, he's laughing, he's telling us jokes, he's making us laugh, and that's not normal. They said for someone that's been in such a serious accident as him, anger, depression, sadness, fear, these are all normal reactions. However, we have seen this before in patients, and what we believe is that Hal is in denial. We believe that Hal's in denial, and he's just disillusioned. He can't handle the reality of what's happened to him. It's so painful to look at how his life is now going to change that he just is laughing, joking, and avoiding accepting what's happened to him. But they said if he doesn't accept it, or until he accepts it, the healing can't begin. And we want you to go talk to him. So my dad came in one night, and I normally had a lot of visitors, but he got me alone when I had no visitors late at night. And he sat me down, and I'm not a real serious guy. My dad's not a real serious guy. He's kind of a joker himself. But he sat me down, and he got real serious. And I was in, if you picture the scene, I'm in a bed, in my bed gown and in my hospital bed. I've never taken a step at this point from the accident. And I'm laying in my hospital bed, and my dad comes in, and he gets real serious and kind of quiet, and he says, Hal, how are you doing? I was kind of taken aback. I said, I'm fine. I'm fine, Dad. Why? Why are you being so serious? He said, I know when you have visitors and you have friends, it's easy to joke and to laugh and to have fun, but how are you really feeling when you're alone by yourself and the lights are off and you're going to bed, you're falling asleep at night and it's just you? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you depressed? It's okay if you are. You can tell me that that's normal to feel that way. And what the doctors didn't realize and what my dad didn't realize, I said, Dad, I'm okay. I'm really fine. I said, I learned something in my Cutco training called the 5-minute rule, which says it's okay to be negative, but not for more than 5 minutes. Once something's happened, accept it, and then focus on the future and what you can control. And I said, Dad, the accident happened 2 weeks ago. I can't change it. I can only focus on what I want to do moving forward and how I can use this experience to benefit my life.